I'm here with Donald Rosenfeld, producer of EFFIE GRAY. Thank you for meeting me
Oh,
today.
it's great to be here, Joshua. Thank you.
So I have
I'm
a
a
few.
fan of your work.
Oh well, and I'm a fan of yours as well.
Thank
I have a few questions for you regarding the movie. So the first thing that I noticed when the movie was over was you and your producing partner are credited before the director, which is something I've never seen before. Um,
Yeah, it's a little conceit of mine in this case because, I really feel that we harken back to the days when movies were producers' mediums. It's the Selznick approach. So, uh, I guess the DGA wouldn't love it, but it's what we decided to
Very interesting.
do. Good spotting.
Yeah, I know that just caught me
Yeah,
because normally at the end of the credits
sure.
you see the director who's
Yeah.
credited and the producer. So very interesting. Okay, so the film's taken a long time to get to the United States, and Universal Pictures came in relatively late
Yeah.
to the whole thing. How did they become involved with the film?
Well, there were three studios involved from the moment we had the cut finished, and they were all bidding for it. And Universal was probably, I would say, the most excited in the sense that they wanted the entire world, and the other ones wanted a kind of division where they would work together and divide it up. And we thought we'll go with one partner, and they bought everything but U.S. theatrical. So,
It's impressive.
yeah.
And what initially drew you to this film? I know you've done a lot of period films in the past with Merchant Ivory, but what drew you to this specific
Well, it
story?
was a script by Emma, and Emma and I go way back, obviously. But I read that script and said, no one's ever looked at Victorian England in this way, and there's no movie that's really dealt with Victorian England that wasn't based on fiction or, I would say, trapped in the kind of royal life of Victoria or her Albert or Mr. Brown. So it was a nice way to move from Edwardian England, where I'd spent a lot of time, back to Victorian England, which is really the beginning of the modern age and an exciting time for me.
And you have a history of producing period pieces with Merchant Ivory,
Sure.
and now this. What initially drew you to the genre?
The period?
Yeah,
Well,
the period.
I mean, I'm a historian by trade, you could say, and by education. I just like the power of movies to really recreate history, to bring you back, sort of the time machine aspect. You really can establish some sense of what history is like and let people travel through it in a way that you can't really in a book, a movie. And David Lean would have been my first guy. Uh, the movies of David Lean, certainly Bridge on the River Kwai was probably the first one I saw and cared about. And then, I would think that Lawrence of Arabia came in at some point. But he really did it in a way that no one had ever done it. And I liked the power of just deep production value, but also storytelling that wasn't unrelated to today. I mean, often period movies can be these dusty antiques, and I believe they should really engage you today. And Emma seemed to do that in the script better than anyone I'd ever seen. So.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because one of my next questions was going to be, you've got a film, you have a film like this that takes place, 150, 200 years ago, but what do you feel that a film like EFFIE GRAY has to say about modern day society, or what kind of comment?
Yeah, it says a couple of things. One, that we are the masters of our own destiny, which I think is a new idea. It's a modern idea that the individual has the right to decide, especially the individual woman, that she can, pick herself up and get out of something terrible and save her life. And in this case, she meets another man, Millet, and goes on to have 8 children, and it would have been a tragedy, and instead it's a triumph. So I would say empowerment is one thing. The power to also, I think, it's a real problem today, which is overthinking your children and their upbringing and who they become. I think Ruskin's parents were the beyond doting. They really created the perfect beast. They created this genius. They put all the elements together, and I think you see that today. Everyone's trying to make sure their son or daughter goes to Harvard, and they'll do anything to get there, but they don't realize maybe that wasn't the right approach. And I think they call it helicopter parents, I think, today. It's one thing to love your children, it's another to manipulate their future and to create a kind of Frankenstein's monster. So I think that aspect, Ruskin as Frankenstein's monster, the perfect genius, and his parents' perfect creation, is something that the movie is a good cautionary tale against.
It's interesting that we're talking about feminism and period pieces because it's something before this that you saw a few here or there, but not a huge amount. But now we have Effie Gray and Far From the Madding Crowd, which is very female driven, much more feminist film than other period films. Why do you think that there's so many coming out now?
Well, it has to do with Tom Sturridge in that case. He's in both of them. No, but he's very good in Effie Gray, and I think he's very good in Far From the Madding Crowd. I think the other movie is the one that is about the the Paris Theater now, about the World War I and the young woman who becomes a nurse.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's another one. Testament of Youth. Yeah.
Testament of Youth. Yes, Testament of Youth. Yeah, I mean, I feel like things come weirdly in groups, whether it's the history of painting and you suddenly get a bunch of pop artists living in different parts of town doing very similar things, Lichtenstein and Warhol, Rosenquist, or, Picasso and Braque and Juan Gris. I just think sometimes the zeitgeist intervenes, but I think we really want that now. I think we want a historical beginning feminism seems to begin somewhere between Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem in 1968 to 1972, where it really probably had earlier, places. And I think, in a sense, the period movie brings us back and shows some kind of desire for women to take life and control it a little better than they were. I mean, the men really were dominant. And I do think all these movies have feminist slants in the sense that women are strong characters. But if you look at the queens of England, you have some pretty strong characters. The empresses of Japan, or I think there's a long matriarchal power base in the world. And I think probably was a better world,
Yeah. But it's interesting, though, because, there's been films like Elizabeth and things like that, but you don't really see much else besides, a film like that here or there. So it's interesting that there's 3 out either in theaters or coming to home media right now. 3 that have been released this year. It's a wonderful thing.
It'd be neat to look at the 3 of them in there, what story they're telling. But I think if you can move people and get people to think a little harder and, feel empowered by things that you give them, whether it's about love and its dissatisfactions or about the right to, if nothing else, coexist with a dominant male society. I think it's all very healthy. I think movies don't have to be didactic to be, thoughtful. And I think as long as they remain, deeply entertaining, they can also change the world. I think if you just start creating tracks that teach lessons, I think people won't watch the movies, and you've got a problem. So it's a fine line, but I think where you can do it, you do it. And I think history is a nice way to do it because you can, bring people back and they think it's not them, but it really is them. And I think that's the great trick you pull. And that's the magic.
And it is very much the David Lean approach, the entertain and you can change the world, while still saying something significant. So you and Emma Thompson have worked together on many occasions.
Yes.
Through the Merchant Ivory films. Now this one, which I assume means that you guys like working together.
We love it. And it's been 3 decades of work together and deep friendship, and we adore each other.
And what is it that you like so much about working with her?
Well, I would say one thing about a certain breed of actor, actress, whether it's Paul Newman on Mr. and Mrs. Bridge or Emma Thompson on Howard's End into Remains of the Day. And boy, the financiers didn't want her in Remains of the Day because she wasn't quite what they, the movie star at that point. She was an unknown. And I kept saying, look at it as a sequel. Emma and Thompson and Anthony Hopkins are back, But I kept saying she's going to win the Oscar for Howard's End. They said, oh, never. And once she did, but prior to that, we insisted that she be in the movie. We weren't going to do the movie, and it wasn't going to move on. But they wanted Angelica Houston, who's a wonderful actress, but she was a big star in those days. They wanted Susan Sarandon. I remember quite humiliatingly insisted that Jim Ivory have the meeting at a carpet store while she looked at carpets, and she wasn't really paying attention to it. He said, I just can't work with somebody. So Emma Thompson is not the one who's going to take you to the carpet shop. She's somebody who's dedicated throughout the whole process. She not only remembers everybody's name, from the smallest craft service guy to the mighty studio chief or whatever. She really is I would say, spirited contributor. And that's what films are. They're collaboration. I think there aren't too many people like her. So she is a triple threat now, which is she can act, she can write, and we know she can direct. If you're listening, Emma, she should become a director soon, and hopefully she'll write things that she will direct, and she can have that in mind. But I think she really understands filmmaking in a way that most actors don't get a chance to. And I think they're really in the hot seat to become the great filmmakers, and some do and some don't. I mean, I think it's admirable that Russell Crowe is out there making movies as director, that Sean Penn has, that so many wonderful things by George Clooney that we talked about, and it's just as director and as actor. So it's exciting. I mean, I think she has every opportunity to do it all, and I think she will.
So, as a producer on the film, producer could mean a variety of things. What exactly was your role as producer on EFFIE GRAY? What did you do for this production?
Always the same. I'm the first one there and the last to go. So I'm usually, in this case, Emma came up with the idea, but I'm usually somebody who has an idea. I might have read a book, I might have seen a play, I might just have an original idea. We generally don't buy screenplays. This is the first time I've ever purchased an original screenplay. And after that, I was inspired to buy one of Gary Trudeau's, which is called The Tunnels of Cu-Chi, which is a movie we're going to do, set in Vietnam. And I generally didn't do that. It would always be, we would develop the screenplay. And so in this case, Emma's script we purchased and asked her to be in it in the part of Lady Eastlake, which she was excited about. But basically, I developed the movies. I usually pay for development myself. Andreas Roald helps. We were kind of 50-50 in all these deals. We're partners. We then get the movie made in the sense of financing it. We generally cast it. We don't rely on the director to do that. We choose the locations with the production designer. The director will be there too, and the cameraman. But we generally try to be, we're the kind of last word on everything. We don't just have final cut, but we have final, like, pre-production choices and who we hire. And often a director will push some kind of department head or something, and I'll just not be impressed, or he'll introduce me to somebody, or she will introduce me to somebody I'm very impressed by. So, I mean, Ruth Myers, who did the costumes, was an incredible, background, and the director didn't want her, and I fought for it, and we got her.
Really?
Yeah. So, and the person he wanted had never done a film, had done some theater, but not in any level. And I knew that the demands of this, just the fact that Dakota had 32 costume changes, if we didn't make original costumes, and he didn't understand the scope of what we were talking about. Yeah. 3 countries, $8 million to make a movie that would cost anyone, even the most independent person, 20, and a studio of 60. You have to get people who really know what they're doing and willing to work. I mean, one thing about Ruth was she came in under budget with a minuscule budget.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So that's incredible fortitude, but also just knowledge. I mean, years of understanding how to do these things. So you need people who are resilient and who have experience. I mean, I always respect my elders. I'd say most of my crew are looking geriatric rather than young and happening, but they bring in seconds who are very young who learn the ropes from them. But I believe in experience. And then I'm certainly the one. Thank you.
That's the way to go.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No. But it's just sweet. But anyway, I think the next step that I do is I'm really there for the edit. This case, Kate Williams edited, who's wonderful. She'd done The Duel for me, and really deep thinker, daughter of a great painter from Australia. Then I really sell the film, market the film. My sister's the head of sales, Robin. We do the publicity, we do the marketing. We really try to be the first one there and the last, because we're really on the hand. I'm never involved in a movie where I just lend my name.
Yeah.
I just don't do it. I've been asked so many times. Also, these big studio setup movies where you kind of disappear once they greenlight it. They pay you a fee. I don't take a fee. We own the movies. We aren't nickel and dimers. We really try to put the money on screen. We don't in any way abuse the system. I think that's what really happens. I think in the independent world, often the next movie is one where there's a bigger budget, and then suddenly everyone thinks, oh, this is a time to be wasteful. But we're pretty rigid. We go back to the small merchant school, which is if it's not on screen, don't spend it.
Yeah.
So.
And so with an $8 million production budget that should have cost $20 million, as you said, how were you able to keep it down like that?
It's difficult. I mean, I think you have to do a lot of things. You have to, in these countries, get in early and get to know people. I mean, in England it was easy because I have been working there for years, but in Venice I knew no one, and luckily with the help of an ambassador to the UK from Rome, who had been in New York, and I knew him in those days. He'd worked for the Rockefeller Foundation and a couple of other things, and he opened the Skeleton Key of Venice. And things like the Bower Hotel, which is a 8-star hotel, gave us all the rooms for free, and because he knew this wonderful lady, and she basically believed in what we were doing and loved the movie. One thing I've done is consistently made movies that are of a high cultural value or artistic value. So I've never sort of made junk, and I think the actors and their agents understand that too. That they're getting this. They're not. Sometimes they make a lot of money on the back end, but they're never going to get a big fee. None of us take fees. So all this above the line costs are down, but also all these working costs on location. I mean, the Bower is a hotel that I think we paid. I gave her whatever the budget was. I think we had 80,000 euros was our total budget for the period, which we could have stayed in a Motel 6 in Genoa or something. I mean, there was just nothing in Italy that you could afford.
Yeah.
And we had 82 people in the hotel, and we had local 50 crew. So she even forgave the bar bills of the crew as a Christmas gift.
That's incredible.
Yeah, one of them said to me, if I had known, I would have drank a lot more. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me it was going to be? You know, but it was so funny. But I think he had fallen in the canal one night drunk, so I think he drank enough. But the point is, you have this generous spirit from people. We don't do any corporate tie-ins or corporate places, but we thanked her afterwards. We thanked the hotel, and we tell everyone that's where you should stay. But it's absurd. I mean, you know, it's the highest priced hotel in, I think, Europe, and my crew couldn't get over it. And it's funny because as Dakota wrote to her managers on the Scottish shoot, so I can't understand that these people have no money. It's the lowest budget, but I'm staying in a palace because we had her in the house that used to be Queen Victoria's in Scotland because we knew the person, and she couldn't believe it. And there was a butler and but we try to go the extra mile, but it's through friendship and through respect for what we do. I mean, the surveyor of the Queen's pictures, a previous one had been a Russian spy, Anthony Blunt, but this one, Desmond, who had run the gallery at Dulwich, the picture gallery, the museum, and I knew over the years, he's now the Queen's pictures. He opened so much access to things at Buckingham Palace for us. You know, they became very helpful in Scotland. We got to shoot on a private estate that was owned by the Crown. You know, things like that that would have cost a fortune, we paid nothing for. So it's really friendship and respect, and knowing that we are not some Hollywood movie coming into, you know, I would say, without. Yeah, we're kind of just using it as a background. We're really engaged. We become friends with it. We stay friends. I mean, the Duke of Wellington offered One London as the picture gallery for the Royal Academy. We couldn't get it insured. It was full of Goyas and Velez because they worried the crew and he said, no, it's yours. But the insurance company refused to cover the day, so we had to shoot miles away in a house that was made for that, but called West Wickham. But it's things like that. People approach you. I mean, you know, it's wonderful. But that's what keeps the budget down. And I think crew members all take a reduced fee, all the heads of departments, because they know that these movies can't be made. We don't have like any desire for overtime, and we work till the end of the day, whatever. No one says, because they know that we have limited days, and it's a kind of collective that people believe in, and I think they see it from the top. I'm there every day. I care about people. We make sure everyone has as people said, why is this the greatest catering and the lowest budget? I said, because I fired the first caterers who were the cheap ones, and we brought in a guy who ran the Colony, an old restaurant that I know, and he brought his own thing. He was happy to make the money and do it on the cheap. So, and some of these things I cover the costs. So like when Bloomberg is the mayor, if we're going over budget, I just make it a gift from me, something like that. Like we had no craft service, so I just paid for it every day. You know, but you know, it's things like that. You know, you solve the problem sometimes by being generous, but it's exciting. You know, we do it because we believe in it.
It's refreshing to hear something like this because this is not what you normally hear about.
No.
When you hear about productions of this sort, especially something that normally would cost so much more.
No, it's really funny. I mean, in the kind of luxury level is what we've always done because it makes the actors and the crew feel good, and I think it's good if you can get away with it. And we've done it all over the place. I mean, I remember one year at Cannes, Disney had supported the Jefferson movie, and you know, they wanted to all stay at the Hotel du Cap, and we said, no, just give us half the money that would cost, and we'll get a house. And we ended up getting a house from this great Picasso collector on the hotel on the Cap d'Antibes that was more glamorous than any Hotel du Cap. So when they wanted to give the party, I said, why don't we do it in our house instead of this hotel?
Yeah.
And they were just amazed because no one had been in it. And they said, how do you all afford this? I said, we didn't pay anything, you know, and because people like us, they like what we do.
Yeah.
So
okay, so what is, you mentioned a Vietnam movie a little bit earlier that you're up to next, and you have a couple of Terrence Malick films coming up. So
What's the
what
future?
is next? What is the next step for?
Yeah, the next is a movie set in the Vietnam War called The Tunnels of Cu Chi, with a script by Gary Trudeau, original script, and it takes you deep into the heart of the Viet Cong and their, you could say, terrorist campaign from these underground sort of cities that they built. In these natural tunnel systems, they created ways to live underground. They would have fires, and smoke would be moved by bamboo straw 5 miles down into the jungle, so they could never be spotted. It's the story of this group of American soldiers who do figure it out and start rooting them out of these tunnels. And there's a famous book called The Tunnel Rats, written about it, about these battalion that mainly came from Spanish Harlem. And they were small and they were resilient and they got underground. But it's a great movie. It's gonna be fun.
And when
We'll shoot in Hawaii on a U.S. base that's still there at Diamond Head that would have been from the period, and because the Vietnam ones are gone.
Yeah.
And we'll shoot it in Vietnam. So we'll start pre-production in November, and we'll give people Christmas off, and then we'll shoot January, February, March.
So should we expect to see this sometime next year, or
Yeah,
or
I think
the
it
following year?
would be Cannes 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, we take time. We don't rush these things.
Yeah.
These movies are timeless, but also we're in no
rush.
well, we're not an assembly line. We do what we do, and the cost of money isn't like a studio where they're just always terrified that if the interest is going up, they're going to get the movie out. There's nothing that wouldn't make it better to make it better. So we edit for a year always.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson from Mr. Malick, who believes that a long edit is a good thing. I think he's right, and certainly from working with Rick Burns over the years. The greatest films on the nonfiction level are always made by time, looking at every shot. I mean, honestly, there are films where the shooting ratio is incredibly low because you just can't afford that much film.
Yeah.
The other films now, because things are shot in digital, we don't do it. Where there's, say, 10 times the amount of footage because it doesn't cost anything. And those edits are ridiculous because most people don't even look at the footage. I mean, it's just like it's coverage for no. We really try to look at every single, and you find things all the time. I mean, so much of this dream sequence stuff with Dakota in this movie came out of footage that other people would have just not looked at. Some of it was even out of focus. My editor said, "Wait a second, that's her mind. That should be her mind." That wasn't even in the script. So
really,
you find things. Yeah.
And so, you mentioned Malick. You're working on The Voyage of Time. Right?
Yes.
And you have another one with him, I saw.
Well, in time, you see To the Wonder.
Yes.
But and then there's this new one I haven't seen, which is
Night of Cups.
Did you see it?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
So I think the next one, I'm not really going to talk about it now, but it's going to be an epic proportion. It won't be like one of these smaller movies.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in those. But the big ones, I like. Voyage of Time is big. Tree of Life was big, and then we'll do a pretty earth-shattering, real story that is set in the past, which I can't talk about now, but it's going to be a big.
And will that one be the next one, or will it be The Voyage of Time?
No, Voyage of Time will be the next. It's
okay.
A lot of it's done. It just needs more time to shoot some more and edit some more, but that'll be next. And then this one would start when that's delivered. It won't start before. We have to finish that, and then we can move forward. But he's wonderful, and what a great filmmaker.
I know the whole film community is looking forward to
Thank you.
to that. So yeah. Anyway, it was wonderful chatting
Good luck
with you,
today.
Donald.
And
Thank
call
you
me
so
anytime
much.
and, we'll talk further.